The one palette I'm asked most about, besides my own, is this one. It's Holbein, and so it's time to take you on a journey to refresh and rebuild one of my most loved watercolor palettes. Along the way, I'll dive deep into this brand's personality, swatch my new pigments, and see where it takes us. All right, friends, Holbein is a brand that is largely defined by their artist quality watercolor line. First introduced in the 1920s, their pigment range has grown to 108 pigmented colors. They are highly transparent with a decidedly Japanese handling personality. Wait, what does that mean? Okay, in my experience, Japanese watercolors take a detour from others in the following ways. Number one, they're definitely more opaque. Number two, they don't travel as easily in watercolor, so not as explosive as I like to say. And number three, they dry with a subtle sheen. It's not shimmer, it's not glitter, it's a sheen, a little shiny. One of the most well-known Japanese watercolor brands is Kuretake Ganzitambi, but I actually would not say that Holbein acts a lot like those if you're familiar with them. Their pigments are ground finer than any other, and this, combined with their absence of oxgall as an additive, give the pigments greater control, color intensity, and predictability. And yes, friends, they are vegan, except for one color that's ivory black. So the absence of oxgall means what? Vegan, yay. Easier to lift colors, so less staining, yay. Not as explosive on the page, But overall, these pigments give you more creative authority. You can always add oxgall to your paint water. But I'll tell you what, I've never been disappointed with them as is. Okay. Here's the Christie Science assessment of pigment personality for Holbein. The color range is incredible. Tons of convenience colors. They're definitely not as explosive as, say, Winsor & Newton or Daniel Smith. Let me actually show you the difference. So I've got the Opera Pinks, Opera Roses comparatively for Winsor & Newton, Daniel Smith, and Holbein. I'm spraying down the paper and the half pans of color. And let's see how these babies react. First up is Winsor & Newton. Really gonna load up the brush, get a lot of pigment on there, and boom, let's see how it does in water. Winsor & Newton has always been really good in terms of traveling in water, and clearly that is definitely happening here. Daniel Smith also, there's actually a little bit less water on the paper in this particular area, but look at how it's traveling. I'm pressing down, a little bit of pressure, and letting the pigment in the water do its thing. And look at it go, look at it go. Adding a little bit more Winsor & Newton here, and you can see, because there is more of a puddle on this side, it's kind of just hanging out a little bit. But gorgeous disbursement, gorgeous traveling now. And as you can see, while it's still moving, and there's definitely a puddle of water there, while it's still moving, it's not moving as wildly. And that is a result of the absence of oxgall. Oxgall is what makes pigment move in moisture. But I'll tell you what, there's nothing to be sad about between these three brands, not at all. Well, it's time, friends. I've been painting with my beloved Holbein watercolors for a little over 5 years. I built this palette from scratch, from a set, and I have used it like it's my BFF. But she's dirty, she needs some refilling, and I mean, why not use this as an excuse to add a few new pigments to the collection? So I'm saying goodbye to this old traditional tin watercolor palette, and I'm going to be popping these in, you guessed it, a vintage watercolor tin. I'm pulling these out and realizing I have my work cut out for me because, as you can see, I used a light green Sharpie to write the names of the pigments and the color numbers on here, and now I really can't see them all that well. What are you gonna do? Anywho, Friends, as I keep working here, are you having a good time? I don't know. I'm hoping that these palette stories, these palette tours are fun for you. Let me know in comments if you like coming along the journey with me as I rebuild my palettes. And let me know if there's any in my collection that you'd like to see more of. And while you're at it, why don't you go ahead and give this video a boop if you feel like you're getting any value. All right, popping these out and remembering that there are no magnets in these little half pans, so I'm going to have to add magnets in if I can before I refill the pigments, or add a little bit of adhesive magnet to the bottom of these pans so they won't slide around in the new tin. Now, I'm not sure if these are all going to fit in the new tin, plus the additional like 10 new pigments that I have coming, but we'll see. Gonna take these out and start to reorganize, see what I have. I have to go back to my pile of tubes and match them up with the half pans. Let me tell you what, friends, this is the epitome of a watercolor obsessed, lazy, Sunday, rainy day project, because it takes some concentration, definitely takes time, and it's kind of tedious, but I love it. Once I've gone through all the tedium of rebuilding this palette, and trust me friends, I'm gonna speed through to all the good parts for you, so stick around because I'm going to be swatching my brand new Holbein palette 2 times to really get better acquainted and reacquainted with this palette. While we're speeding through this footage, friends, I want to answer a question for you. I get asked a lot, what is the benefit of a half pan? Like, why half pans, Christy? And for me, it's about mobility and being able to have a bigger variety, a bigger palette, more colors in a smaller footprint. Now, one of the main drawbacks that I hear from folks about half pans, something to consider. If you paint larger, therefore using bigger brushes, they don't fit as well into those little half pans. However, I have a solution that works perfectly. You spray your palette well before you begin. Make sure that your half pans are nice and juicy and the pigment is syrupy in the middle of the pan. And you'll be able to pick up pigment with no issue as long as your big brush is a little bit damp. See, friends, I travel a ton, and so I don't want to have this teeny tiny palette with only 6 colors in it. I want to have all the colors with me, but I also am very active when I travel, so I can't have a massive palette. And so that's why, for me, half pans are the perfect solution. I don't know about you, but there's nothing quite as exciting as the sight of a big pile of brand new tubes of watercolor. And maybe second to most exciting is when I see a box from Jerry's Artorama on my doorstep. It's here, friends. I am ready to add to the new palette. Building a new palette is definitely a process. This is never a once and done for me. I've been painting for most of my adult life, actually all of it. And so my palettes go through kind of an evolution. They're fresh and new and wonderful, and then 5, 7+ years later, they need a refresh. But when that refresh happens, it's uncomfortable. It feels awkward. You get used to painting with a particular palette. You know where everything is. You know how everything feels. All the half pans are worn down perfectly. Your brush fits in there just so. And then boom, you have big, full, shiny new half pans waiting for you. You've added new colors. You don't know where to put them. I'll stop talking now. But the idea, friends, is go easy on yourself when you're working into a new palette or a palette that's been rebuilt. It's gonna feel a little awkward. Yes, everything right now as I build this new palette feels wild and weird, but honestly, it also feels wonderful. Well, guess what, friends? This collection of pigments is not going to fit in the tin that I had planned, so see you later, Mickey. We gotta choose a new tin. I gotta be honest, I've had this tin, the painting bandit, as I like to call him, for a long time, and it's time to put him to good use. And let's face it, there's room to add even more pigments to this collection, so it's a win-win. Another question I get asked a lot about my use of vintage tins is, don't they rust? And I'll be honest, they don't. They must be treated with something that prevents them from rusting, or maybe it's some type of metal that doesn't rust. Is there a metal that doesn't rust? Anywho, I've never had an issue with that. I will literally just spray down the inside, let it sit for about 10 minutes so all of that dirty pigment that's in there softens up, wipe them clean, let it air dry, and then get to adding the new pigments. All right, let's get into swatching for the first time. And the reason I'm swatching twice is this. I need to start thinking through the new pigment order for this Holbein palette. I need to get to know my new colors. I need to arrange and rearrange. And so the first step is swatching through as they are now so that I can start to get my creative sea legs under me. I feel like Holbein pigments are the perfect hybrid of creamy, velvety texture and clean, crisp color, which is odd because those are kind of like opposites, right? But I think that's why I love Holbein. You see me painting with it so much here on this channel because of that fact. It's magical, this mingling of seemingly opposite pigment personalities. And I'll be honest, when I was developing my palette, I thought a lot about Holbein. Holbein was a huge inspiration for me. So thanks, Holbein. In this first swatching session, I'm also making note of the pigment numbers because I really want to start to wrap my head around where I have what so that I can go back and rearrange easily. Now, swatching for the second time here is more about play. This is the swatching session where I really just want to see how the pigments mingle and especially paying attention to the new colors I've chosen, getting more familiar with those. So this is the loosey-goosey, have fun, roll with it, see what happens, swatching version number 2. Friends, are you having an awesome time? I know I am, so give this video a boop, that's a like, and that really helps out my channel, which means so much to me, friends. And let's hop into comments. I want to hear, you're gonna have to rewind to do this, but I want to hear what your 2 favorite colors from my Holbein palette are. And friends, good luck with that one because I don't know how you're gonna choose. And let me tell you what, now is the time. If you're curious about a specific color from this palette, because again, this palette is the one I get the most questions about. The questions that are like, Christy, what is that pink color 5 over and 2 down? Like, now is the time, friends. These pigments are fresh in my mind, so go ahead and hit me up. I've reviewed 7 other professional watercolor brands that you need to see before deciding which to invest in. So it's time, friends. Go get it and happy painting.